What's up, everybody? This is Justin Flinner coming to you live from Northern Virginia with the Justin Flinner Podcast by My Mentor Medicine. This month's Ask the Expert interview, we sat down with Jeff Millison, Academic Dean at the Virginia University of Integrative Medicine. Jeff is an acupuncturist and Oriental medicine practitioner at his practice in Ellicott City, Maryland, called the River Hill Wellness Center. He is also, as I mentioned, the Academic Dean at the Virginia University of Integrative Medicine. Not only is he an amazing practitioner, he is also unbelievably passionate about the future of this medicine, and he has been a driving force in the development of high-level educational programs at major institutions across the country. He has also helped coordinate cooperative relationships between acupuncture schools and major medical institutions such as Johns Hopkins, and he now sits at the academic helm of one of the top acupuncture and Oriental medicine schools on the East Coast. If you are a practitioner of Oriental medicine, or even if you are a beginning student at an acupuncture or Oriental medicine school, Jeff reveals in this interview some of the most important areas we all need to focus on to preserve what we have accomplished and strengthen our core of this medicine together. I thank you for listening to this month's Ask the Expert interview here on the Justin Flinner Podcast. And be sure to tune in next month for November's interview. Now, sit back, relax, as you join our conversation with Jeff. Good evening, I'm Justin Flinner, and this is the Ask the Expert show by My Mentor Medicine, and I have this month's guest with us, Jeff Millison. Very excited to have him here, and before we get into our questioning, I'll tell you a little bit about him. Some of you out there probably know who he is already. Whether you're a student or whether you're an acupuncturist, you might have run into him a couple times at various different places, organizations, schools, and I'm going to read them to you right now. So Jeff's background, probably if I went off of just index cards alone, I would probably have about a stack this thick, but I'm going to be brief. All right.
Good.
So Jeff brings over 2 decades of experience in academia within the field of acupuncture and Oriental medicine. He was the academic director of acupuncture and Oriental medicine at the Maryland University of Integrative Health. For those of you who are not sure where that is, and you've gone there before, obviously Thai Sophia. So Thai Sophia Institute is the older name. And he was a faculty member at the institution since 1992. He was a clinical supervisor, and he is also a chair of the CCAOM. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. So the Council of Colleges of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. He was on the curriculum committee there, and he was also a member of ACOM, so ACAOM, for those of you who are familiar with that. And he was working on the first professional doctorate task force, which is a big area of focus now for a lot of schools, it seems. And he has also served on the board of the Maryland Acupuncture Society. He's a co-founder and co-director of the River Hill Wellness Center up in Ellicott, Maryland. Ellicott City. He's also a graduate of the Traditional Acupuncture Institute, now MUIH. Should I say the year?
No.
No. Okay, we won't say the year. We'll hold off on that. He has a background in English as well as holistic psychology, and he is now, as we're sitting here, the academic dean at the Virginia University of Integrative Medicine. So it is my pleasure, my honor to have you here today. And I know you for some time now because I, being a student of MUIH, I was learning around 2010 when I started, and I think I met you in 2009, and I remember vividly walking into the large room to see all of the people to talk about the acupuncture program, and you were one of the people that quote unquote convinced me.
Oh, fantastic.
To join.
I didn't know that until this moment.
Very, very glad to have experienced that, and I'm very glad to be here today.
Likewise.
So, Jeff, I'm going to start off with a couple questions.
Okay.
And I want the audience to also be aware that if you also have questions, to please go ahead and send them in, and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. So my first question for you, Jeff, is when did you decide to become an acupuncturist, and what sort of influenced you to make that decision?
I was probably the seminal event that inspired me and moved me towards becoming an acupuncturist was personal health experience. I was in a pretty significant car accident when I was 16, so back in 1979. Now I've told my age. And I was in the hospital for a few months, and I was having a very difficult time healing from my injuries. And Western medicine was just not doing the trick in terms of getting me out of the hospital and getting me back on my feet. And it wasn't really until I had acupuncture that my health turned around in a pretty dramatic fashion. So that personal experience is really what turned my head towards the efficacy of acupuncture, just because of that personal experience.
Right.
And after that, I began to study the profession, study the medicine, and it was really then that I got very attracted to the philosophy of Chinese medicine, which I know you're very familiar of. Mostly sort of a Taoist foundation, looking at how people are all life is intrinsically linked, that natural law really guides all life, if you will, the importance of self-care. It was studying the philosophy of Chinese medicine that really got me attracted beyond just the fact that it worked for me.
Right.
It got me attracted to studying it more myself, and so then I ended up going to school in 1989.
I think that's there's a lot of commonalities in your story and what of other students, at least here at the school that I've talked with. They have some sort of incident that they go and experience acupuncture, whether it's their first choice or whether it's their last choice.
Right.
They end up in an acupuncture clinic, and for some reason they have this magnificent experience. Some of the times, not all of the times, but usually over time they go and they see an acupuncturist, they have a treatment, and then they have a complete transition. So then they make the jump into, I want to learn more about this theory.
Yep.
So having gone through that experience, is there a particular person also that maybe you touched base with at that point in your life and said, what is this stuff about and where can I go to school for this? Is there a particular individual in mind?
Probably the president of Thai Sophia. When I was at school, it was called the Traditional Acupuncture Institute. Changed its name to Thai Sophia, which I think you're familiar with, and then it's now the Maryland University of Integrative Health. And the president of that institution during the time that I was pursuing the school, and was also the co-founder of the institution, Bob Duggan, along with Diane Connolly, founded that school, and it really were very key figures in promoting acupuncture in this country. And Bob is a phenomenal human being. He passed a couple of years ago, and just
loss for the community.
Absolutely. And Bob was a true treasure, and he was probably the main sort of influential character for me to move into academia, because I was a faculty member after I graduated for about 7 years. I was teaching a lot of courses and doing clinical supervision, and because of that, serving on faculty committees, which is sort of a common way, common extension of doing classes. And it was through my work in committees that Bob Duggan reached out to me and said he thought that I should consider applying for the new job that had just opened up. And at the time, I was incredibly busy with a new practice. I had just started the Riverhead Wellness Center, multidisciplinary integrative wellness center, and about 17 practitioners, and I was very, very busy with that venture, and I basically told him no, and he kept at it because he's an incredibly persistent individual.
He was a very persistent man.
To his credit.
Sure.
And he eventually just kept at it and wore me down, and I eventually said gladly yes, and that was back in 2000. So that's what got me involved in academic administration, essentially. Yeah.
I think I have a strong inclination that Bob had a major influence on a lot of people who will watch this or who are watching this to make the jump into the field of this medicine in some way, shape, or form. So let me move on to a little bit about acupuncture and education, as you've already just briefly mentioned. I'm curious, what are 3 areas that you think in this field of medicine, acupuncture and oriental medicine, that you believe have the biggest potential for growth over, we'll say, the next 20 years that might impact the healthcare industry? What 3 areas do you think are coming forward or are being grown now?
I would say one is that the there's a big movement in our country over the last 5 to 10 years towards greater integrative health, integrative medicine. And in fact, this institution, the Virginia University of Integrative Medicine, is an example of that, moving from initially being called the Virginia University of Oriental Medicine and moving to identifying as an institution of integrative learning. And I think that is a trend. It's a very big trend, I think, in this country, not only at the educational level, but certainly at the clinical level. I think it mirrors that. There's a lot more hospitals across the country that are moving. Initially it was called sort of alternative medicine, and then it moved to complementary medicine. And
what do you think the reason of these transitions are, like moving from alternative to complementary to now we have integrative? I mean, it sounds like we're allowed into the party
I
now,
think
in a sense.
I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. I think initially it was recognized that acupuncture and massage and maybe chiropractic could be in that, and herbalism, what have you, were other therapies that people were doing. There was a couple of, seminal studies that were done in the 80s that basically showed how much the public were utilizing, how much the public were spending and utilizing those modalities. And I think at that point, once it was, that the evidence really showed that was a reality, that it existed, that it initially was framed as, well, it exists, it's an alternative, and so it was called alternative medicine.
Right.
And then they saw that it could actually work in conjunction with Western medical care, and that it was complementary, and now we're at the table, and part of teams, and as that has occurred, integratively, I think the new term is integrative health, integrative medicine. So I think that's a really big trend. It's clear that is going on. I could give lots of examples of it, but it's just, that's the reality. And I think that's a big movement in the profession. And I think that the schools across the country generally have done a really good job of educating practitioners and educating students, ultimately graduates, to being excellent clinicians. But I don't think that the schools have done as good of a job over the years at the master's level at educating students about how to integrate into the Western medical sort of larger establishment. And there's a new degree, and I think you referenced it before, about there's a new doctorate degree, a new professional doctorate degree that I actually worked. I was honored to be able to work on the task force that helped to develop some of the competencies for that degree. That degree is really all about helping practitioners be able to work in partnership and in concert with and integratively with Western medicine.
Right.
So how to speak the language of Western medicine, how to function on integrative teams.
And that is key when you want to actually integrate. We both have to know each side. So is there also education happening on the other side, as some people usually refer to the East and the West?
Yeah,
is the West being educated
absolutely,
as well?
Yeah. There's more and more classes, if not full courses, on complementary modalities, integrative modalities. I just had a meeting with the COO here at VUIM, John at a local hospital, and it's run by Hopkins, and Hopkins is actually pulling in guest lecturers from fields and modalities like acupuncture to educate their docs, their doctoral students to be able to know what these modalities are, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and how to refer, essentially, and how to work integratively. So it's happening, I think, both ways.
Right.
So I think that's one of the key things, is the rise of integrative health, integrative medicine in this country. I'd say, secondly, another big opportunity is more community health clinics. There's just was a news report, I think a couple days ago, about how CVS is moving into greater sort of proponent of and creation of minute clinics. Walmart has been pushing that. Walgreens, Whole Foods is actually discussing it as well.
You have Target, you have Walmart, you have Costco, they have eye doctors.
Exactly.
They're going to have everything. Pretty soon you'll be able to deliver babies in these places.
That's right.
For all we know.
And pick up some bottled water at the same time.
And get acupuncture too.
So because
shopping, deliver a baby, come home, you'll be fine.
Get your dry cleaning. Yeah, I mean, that is a true, sort of spike in our country, is of those minute those many clinics. And I think the vision is that as healthcare costs are spiraling out of control, which is on the front page of the news every single day in this country, the need to find a different way to serve the public is key. And absolutely, acupuncture, from a cost-effective standpoint, related to Western medicine, is pennies on the dollar in terms of how much people are spending. It's a relatively low-cost modality, and so it's widely predicted that at these community clinics, these increasing number of community clinics, that other modalities will start to become integrated into the teams, the healthcare teams. Acupuncture is actually been explicitly discussed on a number of times as being one of the modalities that would likely be a part of it.
So we've come from integration now that the schools are starting to build these programs off of to understand various modalities outside of acupuncture-oriented medicine. Now we're starting to develop clinics, such as community health. What's the third area?
I think the third area, I mean, 'cause I'd given this a little bit of thought prior to this interview. I mean, the third area to me, I think, is acupuncture's use for pain. For just looking at the front page of the news, or the sort of the top news stories, over the last year in health. I mean, one of the key ones is just the opioid crisis in this country, and it's crystal clear that the medical establishment needs to discover other ways, non-pharmacological, non-opioid ways of helping people with pain. And acupuncture is an ideal candidate for that. It's actually been explicitly discussed in some of the healthcare reform bills that have occurred. And I think that, as we step into that in a greater way, I think it improves our visibility and our viability as a profession. I think we're well positioned to really serve our communities in that regard.
I agree, because I think even there's some government organizations, the VA and whatnot, are now beginning to accept a lot more of these types of treatment. And there have been other ones that have been using it in the past. Walter Reed has utilized it at their location and various other places, but I agree. I think pain management is humongous in terms of how we can benefit. I think that's a humongous place also for us to start in building this integrative and also these community health organizations.
100% agree.
So we have three things that we can see potential growth for. Now let's take a look at three things that might have been holding us back maybe to this point, and we still may be gripping onto. What are the things that you might think are holding back the profession of acupuncture and oriental medicine?
I think they relate, to those three things. I mean, really, as one is what's holding us back to some degree is that I think schools, again, at the master's level, have done a fabulous job of graduating, superb clinicians, and not as good of a job at graduating practitioners, who have the skills to be able to integrate into the Western medical establishment. And that's changing, I think, at the master's level to some degree, and certainly the professional doctorate. The competencies are all about that, learning how to speak the language, being bilingual, speak the language of Western medicine, learning about hospital systems and healthcare systems and how to be a team member, sharing electronic records and learning how to
So this is the integrative approach, and I think a lot of this is sort of new playing fields for even Western medicine practitioners.
It's true. We're all learning together.
Incorporating them into the introduction of technology, wearable technology, electronic health records to actually keep track, all for the sake of the patient and healthcare in general, but it can be quite costly. There's a lot of things that are holding us back.
It's true, and you said something I think is very insightful. I completely agree with, which is that Western medicine is learning this at the same time. We're learning it together. I mean, I've been a part of some partnerships that have been created with hospitals in this region with acupuncture schools, and in fact, the discussions once we're sitting at the table are really about figuring it out together, and there is no expert. We're just learning together, and I think we're breaking ground in that way. I think probably people will look back at this time in 30 years and see this as sort of like, I would hope and I predict, as sort of the foundation of a pretty big movement in this country along those lines.
I agree. You can see it in some places. Do you have other ideas for things that might be holding us back that you think we could work past?
Two things. One is I think research literacy is a place that's, I think, has held us back to some degree. Being able
specific areas of research.
Yeah, being practitioners learning how to not only access research in terms of evidence-based foster evidence-informed practice. But what I'm more pointedly just speaking about is doing research and being a part of things like outcomes-based research, and that is ultimately what is going to sway certain people to look at acupuncture in a more viable fashion. It's happening a lot more in the East and less so in the West.
You can go online right now and you can search for different forms of research for acupuncture and oriental medicine.
Oh, yeah.
You can already pull up thousands of research. So are there areas that we may not be looking into that we might want to?
I think that probably around pain, but I think one of the key things is that the type of research that's being done is not necessarily at the level that that this culture, that Western sort of science in terms of their evaluation of research. I think that we could step up our game, if you will, as in this country, to put out research I think that's more widely accepted. So I think that's a key thing. And then thirdly, I would say, the membership organization on the national level for acupuncture is not firing on all cylinders, if I'm going to put it really nicely. It's a lot of room for growth. And membership organizations traditionally in professions are not just ways to sort of get cheaper benefits or insurance, but ultimately they're the voice of the profession. So not just in terms of like helping with media campaigns and PR and exposure, but equally important legislatively. And we just do not, as a profession, have a strong membership organization right now. And quite frankly, the people who own the membership organization would echo that. And that's an area, to your initial question, I think that if we could strengthen that, it will be to our benefit.
Are you speaking to like state memberships, like the local Virginia or more national?
More national.
More national.
Yeah, some of the state organizations are just doing a fantastic job, right. I think. Some less so. And that's to be expected. But more importantly, it's the national voice. It's the national organization.
That's going to produce the most movement for these first three things.
Yeah, I think so. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue with a little bit more about education and what can students do right now? Because I think there's a lot of people viewing that might be students in general, and I know there's some just across the hallway, and they might be peeking in the door. What can students do right now to start preparing for changes to come in the healthcare industry along the lines of what you've talked about? So we have integrative medicine, we have community health. So those are good labels that we can put on what we could potentially work towards. But what are some actions that they could possibly take while they're in school or while they're getting out of school? And also together with technology, whether it's wearable technology, whether it's electronic health records, how can we sort of put acupuncture, I guess, in the spotlight and say, wow, this is new, this is neat.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
I guess first thing I'd say was, from a non-technological standpoint, would be just to stretch, to outside of one's comfort zone and really seek to make connections with not just potential patients, but also with a local sort of the local medical establishment, to try to build alliances and partnerships with, and relationships, really, it comes down to that, with doctors, nurses, chiropractors, physical therapists in the community, to be able to
old school network.
Yeah, 100%. To actually to say, to try to explain what they do, and to work on their elevator speech, so to speak, in terms of how to talk about what they do in a way that's concise and clear and accurate. And so I think networking is a really big piece, and that's sort of a low tech. And on the tech side, it's stating the obvious, but social media is, here we are, right?
Yeah,
social media is
right.
very important. I would say for all practitioners, specifically new practitioners, it is the way that a lot of people get their news and information. And I think to be able, I'm functionally illiterate when it comes to social media myself, so I'm not the best example of that. But if I'm trying to guide students, which was your question about something that they would benefit from, I think it's very important to become more adept at communicating through social media and learning the ropes around that. Lastly, you mentioned EHR. I referenced it earlier.
Right.
That is becoming the industry standard, without a doubt. And not only does that provide a way to a platform a shared platform to integrate with Western establishment, there's also some just great EHRs that have been created that are just specific, that are customized for the Oriental medicine practitioner and an acupuncturist.
Yeah, I know there's more that are sort of bursting through the seams,
Yeah.
if you will. I've utilized some in my
Have you?
own
Okay,
clinic
yeah.
in the past, but they're probably outdated by now. There weren't that many, but also, I mean, it's nice, even just as a patient yourself, to just go to the office and then come home and then check online and see, okay, I need my immunization records, because I mean, how many places whether you go to get involved with some kind of activity, I know my kids do this, so my kids will get involved in an activity and they'll say, can you please send us the immunization record? I'm like, oh great, now I have to call the doctor's office and show up and pay money for the paper. Now you can just get it right from your phone.
Sure.
I can log in, pull it all off of there,
Yeah.
and send it to them within 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then clearly, if we're thinking about things that will in 30 years we'll look back on and we'll think to ourselves,
I don't want to
that
think
was
about
the
that
dark
right
ages.
now.
I mean,
I'm
that-
still getting started, but at the same
Me too, yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
yeah, it's happening, right? And
It
so
is.
so to get on the ground,
Constantly.
relatively ground floor of that, and really start familiarizing oneself with it. And what I can say also just briefly about EHRs is it sounds, like a fancy title, and it sounds potentially like something that would be a barrier for some people because it's too much to sort of grab hold to.
Yeah.
What I can say is that there are some really affordable EHRs that are not only provide a shared platform with Western medicine, and not only is it to get it because it's industry standard, but have great resources built in.
Mm-hmm.
So for an acupuncture practitioner, you can, research bladder 21. It's the point functions of bladder 21, the point location. You can record that information.
Yeah, everything is right there.
It is.
Yeah,
It's actually a fabulous tool.
Yeah.
I think most people, if they test drive one of those EHRs, will come away kind of excited and not
I
not
agree.
just
It's a little.
scared.
It's always a little overwhelming
Sure.
at first. It's like learning how to drive. You get in the car and it's like, oh, where's the turn signal? Where's
Yeah.
the light? For the brand new car, even if you know how to drive,
Right.
it's always new. So,
Yeah.
I have some students that sent me some questions
Yeah.
because they knew the interview was going to occur, and I asked them. I said, if you have questions, now's the time.
Okay.
And it's perfect because
Here we are.
you're live. You're
All right.
right here. So one of the questions comes from Ralph Mioni, and his first question for you is, I was a student at MUIH for one trimester. Do you have any plans of instituting a cohort or a similar system here at VUIM?
Hi, Ralph. I would say that I'm in discussions, with administration about that. There's pluses and minuses to a cohort system, I think, as you know, and
Because that's what we used
at MUIH,
at
exactly,
MUIH.
yeah, which I think was what Ralph is probably sort of referencing. So there's pluses and minuses to it, and I've been here for a few weeks, and so I'm
Yes.
getting my feet on the ground, and this is one of the discussion points. I can say for sure that that strengthening the sequencing of courses, you and I were discussing this before we
Right.
started this interview, is one of the areas that's going to improve very quickly, I think, and
Sort of helps streamline the education as well to make
Yeah.
sure everyone is along the same track.
exactly, yeah.
That's
So
good.
so I can ensure that, and we're going to take a look if the cohort system is the best model to achieve that.
Right. Okay, so his second question that comes also from Ralph is along the same lines, but it's essentially, what are your priorities for VUIM? I know that's a larger question, but he follows up and he says, what changes are you thinking about? So what changes in addition to curriculum, good, positive changes, whatever you've noticed? I mean, it's been a short time
Yeah.
since you started. You've already worked on a number of different things. You hit the ground running at a very fast pace. So what sort of things do you have in mind?
I think the main things, can talk about specific areas within the program. I think there's some probable room to sort of strengthen the clinical experience for students. I think that there needs to be a curriculum, review, and so there's some policies, procedures in terms of the handbooks. I think are likely to be strengthened and clarified. I think which be ultimately, it sounds boring, but ultimately beneficial for people.
It's important to structure.
Yeah,
We need
but
a good structure to work.
But speaking of structure, one of the key things that is not sort of like a specific area to focus on as much as it is creating an overarching kind of functional structure, is I want to build greater communication structures with the students, and I want to do the same thing with the faculty. So I've already set up some meetings with some students to move towards sort of an advisory panel or advisory committee model. I'd like the students to be able to know that they have a voice in what happens here at VUIM, and I think that's key in my role, is being able to get that feedback from the people who are having that, who are on the ground and actually the primary users, of the program. And so setting up a communication structure with faculty and myself, students and myself, is key. And then also the same with faculty. And you and I spoke about this for a few minutes before the interview. Is I want faculty to really take a larger role in brainstorming what's going to benefit the school in service of the students and in service of their patients. Yeah.
So Ralph, we have some streamlining of your learning to come, and we also have some more communication opportunities.
Yes.
So this is good.
Yeah.
Another student who sent in some questions is Renee Lee, and I will preface her questions by first saying that she is actually volunteered to go to Acupuncturists Without Borders.
Okay,
Sometimes
great.
I mess up those things. She's right now on her way to Oklahoma.
Oh, fantastic.
With that organization
Nice.
to help.
It's a great organization.
With an emergency situation down there that they have set up. So a shout out to her and to Acupuncturists Without Borders. If you're not aware what that is, take a quick moment after the interview is over and look that up and chat with Renee when she returns. So Renee's questions for you are, number one, how do we protect our acupuncture licenses, and how do we protect acupuncture and oriental medicine as a profession? And one of the reasons she's asking this is because there are other professions out there who are starting to utilize tools of acupuncture. So physical therapists are utilizing needles for dry needling. Chiropractors may be doing the same thing. And she also has informed me that now nurses are getting a little bit of training using different forms of acupuncture. So what can we do to sort of, in essence, I think the word protect yourself is a bit defensive, but I think it's a valid place to start from.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's an important topic, I think, for the profession. Multifaceted answer. I mean, ultimately, I think it's the key thing is through education. Is educating the public as to the differences of education and training between acupuncturists and some of the other modalities that you mentioned. So I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's different state by state. But physical therapists have 100 or maybe sometimes 200 hours.
Different number of hours. Right.
In order to become certified, I believe is the term, to utilize acupuncture needles in their practice to do sort of something they call dry needling, essentially. Yeah. There are not a lot of differences from my vantage point of dry needling and acupuncture. The name, they're using different names, but they're very similar. and I'm not saying that doesn't potentially have some level of value, and I think it probably does, for some people, if they get dry needling techniques with physical therapists. But the public needs to understand that that's very distinct from what an acupuncturist does in terms of the wide breadth of concerns that an acupuncturist can take on and work with their patient load, and the educational difference is enormous.
That's the big difference.
And I think that most obviously acupuncturists know that and physical therapists know that, but the public does not. Absolutely, and they just see acupuncture needles and physical therapists are licensed practitioners, acupuncturists are licensed practitioners. It must be that they're both. It's the same for both, and so education, I think is like absolutely key, without attacking other professions, but just shining a light on the distinction.
With it, but we should be acknowledging the fact that we have worked very, very hard, a long number of hours. We've done all of the necessary things we need to get beyond certified, actually licensed by the Board of Medicine to practice a specific type of medicine, not just a small technique. So we have a wider range, and a lot of the times just the schools focus on acupuncture. It's an attractive word, it's an attractive technique, and it's something that most people don't really know about. So education, I agree with you. I think it's a major thing. She does have another question for you, which is, what are your thoughts on how to run a profitable business that has a foundational mission of service to the community?
It's a good question. I think I share the I share the concern maybe that's at the heart of the question, which is how to have acupuncture be a viable form of healthcare for a wide range of socioeconomic groups, essentially. I think that's vitally important, and I can tell you that one of the things I've identified in my short time at VUIM is an area for growth, I think, of the institution is to review the curriculum in regard to how we're teaching students to engage in community health level, how to utilize acupuncture at the community health level, and how not just to learn about that in the classroom, but to set up clinical experiences where the students actually get to experience, using acupuncture in different ways and in different segments of the population, essentially. Right. I think it's very important for the medicine to stay focused on being viable and accessible to that wide range of groups, and I think it just starts in the classroom and starts in modeling it in the clinic at the institution, and yes. And different people have different sort of policies that they have in their practice. I know practitioners who have sliding scales, and practitioners who will donate a certain amount of treatments, per week to patients that aren't able to afford the regular rates. And so there's personal ways to do it. There's, I think, more structural ways to do it. And I'm completely committed here at VUIM is to strengthen that aspect of our offering.
A lot of that comes down to someone's individual belief on how they would like to offer it to the public.
That's
whether
true.
It's community health. I mean,
Yep.
they want to do this large group setting of people just come in at random times with the sliding scale. You may have people that want to do concierge form, and
Yeah.
you pay like a membership fee,
That's
and
right.
you can come in and get treated. It's really up to the practitioner in general, but one of the things that I've noticed, not just in acupuncture and oriental medicine itself, is also in various other schools, probably a lot of them, is when you graduate from college and you step out the door, what's next? A lot of people ask that question, especially if you are going into a field such as this, acupuncture and oriental medicine. You want to open your own clinic. If you don't have stuff set up beforehand when
Yeah.
you're ready to walk out the door,
Right.
you won't have anywhere to go.
That's right.
So I think it's a great question from you, Renee, and hopefully Jeff gave you some insight to that. And during your education here, you can build upon that and create your own clinic outside with the support of everyone that you have here inside. So Jeff, I have one more question
Sure.
for you. It's one of my favorite to ask. I'm not quite sure why, but I like the story, if you will. Maybe I get it from Bob.
Okay.
I like the practice of hearing people's stories. So what gets you out of bed every single day? Like why do you get up and say, I want to be an acupuncturist? Or even if you weren't an acupuncturist, what is the driving force for you right now to get up out of bed? I know you got a little boy.
Yeah.
And he probably comes in and says, Daddy, it's time to get up.
Well,
Something like that.
He doesn't have to come in. He just rolls over.
He just rolls over. Or an alarm. All of that aside, what literally gets you up? What gives you the drive and ambition to go through?
Well, I would actually say it is my son, my 6-year-old son, just turned 6, Shay, and he literally wakes me up in the morning, and he's literally figuratively what gets me out of bed. And what I mean by that is, I am in this profession ultimately to make a difference, and like so many other people, I'm certainly not unique in that way. I want to make the world a better place. I mean, I see a lot of issues, sort of in this country and in the world. I think there's a lot of room for growth and healing and strengthening. As certainly, I can speak for our own country, and I want to make a difference, and I want to positively contribute to that. And I feel very blessed to be a part of this profession that I actually think has a lot to offer the larger community, both in terms of the philosophy of Chinese medicine and also on a very pragmatic level, the health care benefits of itself, I think offers a lot to the general public. And I think it's one way to make a difference in the world. And so, the next generation is really what gets me out of bed, and being able to do something that I feel passionate about, that I think is ultimately positively affecting our world. And there it is.
There it is. And I can honestly say, and I'll own this when I say it, that you have affected the next generation, because I am
That's
the
right.
next generation. So
That's right.
I've stepped up to the plate, and I can honestly say that yes, you have had a large effect on me, and I'm sure there's a lot of viewers out there who can say the same.
Oh, thanks,
and
Jason.
I know that VUIM will definitely benefit and have a strong effect from what you're bringing to the institution.
Thank you so much.
You're just getting started. So
I greatly appreciate it.
Jeff Millison here. Do you have any final words of wisdom you want to give to everyone? I think
we've covered it.
Wait for that.
Yeah.
Your son might be watching.
Exactly.
Sure. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, I'm Justin Flinner and Jeff Millison here at VUIM, Virginia University of Integrative Medicine, and I look forward to seeing you all next month for Ask the Expert. Have a good one, everyone. The Justin Flinner Podcast is brought to you by My Mentor Medicine, an organization dedicated to helping people improve their lives by learning to empower themselves and take control of their own life. Any form of reproduction or distribution of this podcast or the information contained in this podcast is strictly prohibited. Should you have any questions on how to use this podcast or the information contained within this podcast, please contact My Mentor Medicine at info@mymentormedicine.com.